It was supposed to be an ordinary morning. I remember the air was cool, crisp, with a hint of rain outside, typical Portland weather. I was having my coffee, thinking about the day ahead, when I heard my phone ring. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another call, probably another reminder or a sales pitch. But when I looked at the screen, I saw an unfamiliar number. I answered, half expecting it to be a wrong number. Hello? The voice on the other end was calm, but urgent, and immediately I could feel my chest tighten. Is this Sarah? Sarah, your daughter. She's been in an accident. A car hit her on the bike trail. She's in critical condition. We're rushing her to the hospital. You need to get here now. In that moment, everything stopped. The world didn't just go silent, it went black. My mind was frozen. I couldn't even process what was happening. Was it real? Was this really happening? I barely hung up the phone before I jumped up, my hands shaking. I couldn't think straight. I grabbed my keys, my purse, anything I could get my hands on, and I ran outside. But nothing felt real. I didn't even remember getting into the car. All I could think about was my daughter, Lena.
Hey, if you're enjoying the story so far, hit that subscribe button. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, and your support is crucial. It only takes a second and helps us grow. Thanks.
How did this happen? Was she going to be okay? Remember looking out of the car window as I sped through the streets, my heart pounding in my ears. It felt like hours passed in minutes. I kept telling myself, she'll be okay. She has to be. But deep down, I knew it was serious. The hospital was only a few minutes away, but it felt like an eternity. When I finally parked, I ran inside, pushing through the automatic doors, barely stopping to catch my breath. I rushed to the reception desk, my voice frantic, my body trembling. I'm here for Lena Carter. She's been in an accident. Where is she? The receptionist gave me a calm, almost mechanical response. She's in surgery right now. Please wait here. Someone will come to update you soon. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't. The air in the waiting room felt thick, like it was closing in on me. I didn't care about the other people there. I didn't even see them. My mind was fixed on one thing and one thing only. My daughter. Every second that passed felt like it stretched into hours. I could barely breathe. The minutes kept dragging on, but no one came to tell me anything. The longer I waited, the more I felt the weight of fear settle into my bones. Is she okay? Is she okay? I kept asking myself, but the answer never came. It wasn't until hours later that the surgeon came out. I could see the look in his eyes. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't relieved. He was serious. My heart sank. She's still in surgery, he said, his voice steady, but I could hear the undercurrent of concern. We've done everything we can for now. There's severe head trauma, a fractured leg, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. She's stable, but the next 24 hours are critical. There's a chance she won't make it. She's young, but it's serious. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. I didn't know what to say, what to do. All I could think of was her smile, her laugh, the way she always joked around, even when life wasn't perfect. Lena couldn't be gone. Not like this. Not today. I stood there in shock for what felt like forever. I called my ex-husband Ben, but all I could manage were half sentences broken by sobs. My father had already promised to come, but he was still hours away. My world felt like it was spinning out of control. I walked back to the waiting room and found a chair, sitting there numbly. I couldn't even look at the other people in the room. What could I possibly say to them? How could I explain the raw, gut-wrenching fear that was gripping my heart? I didn't know how long I'd been sitting there when the nurse came over. She looked at me kindly, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, too. You can't stay like this, she said softly. You need to eat, rest. We'll update you as soon as we can. I nodded, but I wasn't hungry. Not even close. Nothing mattered but Lena. I wasn't sure how I was still standing, how I was still breathing. Everything felt like a blur. Like I was moving through a dream I couldn't wake up from. All I could think was, Lena has to wake up. She has to fight. The hospital room felt like a different world, a place where time seemed to stand still. I spent hours there, sitting beside Lena's bed, my hand clutching hers as if my grip could somehow keep her tethered to this world. The machines beeped rhythmically, the sound both comforting and terrifying. I spoke to her, telling her about all the things I planned to do once she woke up, all the trips we were going to take, the birthday parties, the beach days, the ordinary life we were supposed to have. But as the night stretched on, I began to realize something that hit me harder than anything else. I was alone in this. My mother had not come. She didn't even call. I couldn't understand it. Lena was fighting for her life. And where was my mother? Off planning a dinner party? Not even an ounce of concern for her granddaughter. The sting of her absence cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I had always tried to make her proud, always tried to live up to her standards. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. And now, in the most crucial moment of my life, I felt invisible. Alone. I tried to shake it off, but the thought kept creeping into my mind. Where was she? Where was the family who always expected so much from me? Hours later, my phone buzzed, in my pocket. I hesitated before picking it up. It was my mother. I had hoped for a message, a simple text asking if Lena was okay, but instead, her words were cold, harsh, almost businesslike. Sarah, you missed dinner with the family tonight. We need to talk about the plans for next month. Your sister's anniversary is coming up. Please don't ignore this. I've left a message with Ben about the details. I stared at the screen for a long time, my heart sinking further with each word. She was worried about a dinner? I had a daughter fighting for her life, and my mother was preoccupied with dinner. Plans? It was almost like a slap in the face, a reminder of how little she ever truly understood me. The anger that simmered inside me suddenly erupted. My daughter was lying in a hospital bed, and my family was more concerned about appearances and social obligations than about what truly mattered. I could feel my hands shaking, and the tears that had been building inside me finally broke free. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration, of years of resentment, of feeling like I was constantly chasing approval from a woman who would never be satisfied with me. This is enough, I whispered to myself, the words barely audible above the hum of the machines. I can't do this anymore. I didn't reply to my mother's message right away. Instead, I sat there, breathing deeply, trying to steady my emotions. Lena's condition was fragile, and I couldn't let the toxic patterns of my past with my mother distract me. But then, just as I was trying to calm myself, my phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. It was Ben. I answered immediately. Sarah. Listen to me, Ben said, his voice anxious, trying to keep calm. I know this is hard, but your mom, she's calling. She's furious that you aren't answering her. She said you're being disrespectful. I closed my eyes, exhaling sharply. I don't care anymore, Ben. This isn't about her. This is about Lena. And if my mother can't see that, then I don't have time for her demands. I'm not going to let her guilt me into choosing her over my daughter. Ben was quiet for a moment, probably trying to find the right words, but I didn't need him to explain it to me. I didn't need anyone to justify my actions. I had spent too many years seeking approval from my mother, allowing her to dictate the terms of my life. But not anymore. I hung up and turned my phone off. No more calls, no more guilt. I could hear my breath quicken as I realized what I had just done. I had chosen. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself and my daughter. No more being pulled in different directions by the expectations of others. This was my fight, and I wasn't going to lose it. Later that evening, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my sister. I opened it reluctantly, not sure if I wanted to read her words. Mom says you're being disrespectful by not showing up to family events. She's furious with you. She said you're choosing Lena over family. You really need to talk to her. I almost laughed bitterly. Choosing Lena over family? What kind of family didn't understand what it meant to put your child first? I didn't owe them an explanation. Not anymore. But it wasn't just my mother or my sister I was frustrated with. It was the entire dynamic of my family. The expectations, the judgments, the constant comparison to my sister. The way I had always been the second best. Not anymore. I whispered to myself. Not anymore. I stood up from the chair, walking over to Lena's side. She was still unconscious, her body connected to so many machines. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a shift inside me, a sense of clarity. I was no longer the person I had been when I entered that hospital room. I had chosen my path, and this was the only path that mattered now. I leaned down and kissed Lena's forehead gently, whispering, "I'll always be here for you, no matter what." And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The days that followed were a blur, but amidst the chaos, something began to change inside me. I had made the choice to stand up for my daughter, and in doing so, I had begun to stand up for myself as well. I had no idea what the future would look like. But one thing was certain. I couldn't go back to the way things had been. I couldn't go back to living in the shadows of my family's expectations, constantly bending myself to fit their mold. Lena was still unconscious, her body fighting hard for survival. Every morning I would arrive early, my heart in my throat as I entered the ICU, hoping for a sign that she was getting stronger. And every evening, I would leave, praying that tomorrow would be the day she opened her eyes. But somewhere in the middle of all this, something remarkable happened. As the days turned into weeks, Lena began to show small signs of improvement. It started with tiny twitches in her fingers, then a faint squeeze of my hand. It was like a whisper of hope, a flicker of light in a room that had been so dark for so long. I remember the first time she moved her hand and looked at me with a confused expression. Her eyes were still heavy with sedation, but I could see something in them, a recognition. It was the first time in days that I felt a rush of relief. "Lena? Can you hear me?" I asked, my voice trembling as I held her hand. She didn't respond, but I could tell she was trying. Her fingers moved again, this time a little more deliberately, and I felt a surge of hope flood through me. She's fighting, I thought. She's fighting just like I knew she would. But as Lena's condition improved, something else happened too. The tension with my family didn't go away. In fact, it only got worse. A few days after Lena showed signs of recovery, my mother called again. I had avoided her calls for days, but this time I couldn't avoid her any longer. "Sarah, I need to talk to you." Her voice was cool, distant, like always. "You've been ignoring me, and frankly, I don't understand why you can't just come to your senses and be there for your family." I could feel the anger building inside me as I listened to her words. "My family? You mean the family that's been absent while my daughter fought for her life? The family that expects me to drop everything for a dinner party?" I wanted to scream it, but instead, I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to let her drag me into another emotional fight. "Mom, I'm not ignoring you. I'm taking care of my daughter. This is the most important thing in my life right now." There was silence on the other end of the line, then a sharp, disapproving sigh. "I understand that, Sarah, but you can't just abandon your responsibilities. Lena will be fine. You need to think about the future. Think about what's best for the family." I could feel my patience wearing thin. "What's best for the family?" I asked, incredulously. "What's best for the family is for me to be here, right by Lena's side. If you can't understand that, then maybe you should just let me do what's best for my daughter." My mother's tone turned icy. "Family loyalty is a two-way street, Sarah. If you don't show up for your family, don't expect us to show up for you." And that was it. The final straw. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, my voice calm but resolute. I hung up the phone, not feeling the slightest bit guilty. I had done it. I had finally chosen myself, my daughter. And no one, not even my mother, was going to make me feel bad for it. But as I stood in the ICU room, watching Lena sleep, I knew the journey wasn't over. My decision to stand up for my daughter and myself was just the beginning. In the days that followed, Lena continued to improve. She started to respond to simple commands. She squeezed my hand when I told her to. And one morning, as I sat beside her bed, I saw her eyes flutter open for the first time in over a week. "Mom?" Her voice was weak, barely a whisper, but it was music to my ears. I leaned forward, my heart bursting with emotion. "Lena, you're awake. Thank God. I'm so proud of you." She blinked slowly, clearly confused, but I didn't care. She was here. She was alive. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a deep sense of peace. "We're going to be okay, Lena. I'm right here." The days after that were a blur of recovery. The doctors were amazed at her progress. Her body was healing, bit by bit, and so was my spirit. Lena began to walk again with assistance, and we worked on building her strength together. I saw my daughter's determination in every step she took. It was a beautiful reminder that no matter what had happened, we could rebuild. But I also knew that I had changed. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that hospital room days earlier. I had found a new strength, a strength I never knew I had, and I was determined to hold on to it. The road to healing was long, but it wasn't just about Lena anymore. It was about me too. It was about reclaiming my life, my voice, my family. And finally, I was ready to do it. The days stretched into weeks, and as Lena's recovery continued to unfold, I found myself growing stronger too. Every day felt like a victory, even the smallest ones. The first time Lena laughed after waking up was a moment I would never forget. The sound of her voice, light and clear, was like music to my ears. It wasn't just a sound of recovery. It was a symbol of resilience, of both of us fighting through the hardest battle we'd ever faced. But even as we celebrated these victories, the ripple effects of my decision to cut ties with my family started to settle in. My mother, of course, didn't take my choices lightly. She called me several more times, each conversation colder and more distant than the last. "Sarah, I can't believe you've done this. You're throwing away everything for this child." Every word she spoke tried to worm its way into my conscience, but I had built a new resolve. "She's my daughter. I will always put her first. I've given too much of myself to people who don't appreciate me. I'm not going back to that." There was a final phone call with her that, in a way, marked the end of my old life. I wasn't angry anymore, just done. I didn't need her approval, and I wasn't going to bend myself to meet her expectations anymore. "Mom," I said, my voice steady, "this is where I stand. I've made my choice, and I won't apologize for it. Lena comes first." She didn't say anything for a long time. I could almost hear her disappointment on the other end of the line, but for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up, and that was the last time I spoke to her. But as my relationship with my mother ended in silence, my bond with Lena grew stronger than ever. I began to see the person she was becoming, not just the girl who had been in a coma for days, but the resilient young woman she was destined to be. As Lena's strength returned, so did the bond between us. Every day we built new memories, We went on long walks together, rediscovered our favorite ice cream shop, and talked for hours about everything, from school to the things that scared her, to the dreams she had for her future. I watched her grow, not just physically but emotionally. She was learning to navigate the world with a new perspective, one shaped by everything we had been through. And I was there for every step of it, cheering her on, holding her hand through the tough moments, and celebrating the victories, big and small. But even as Lena healed, I knew I had to find peace within myself. I couldn't keep fighting the same battles with my family. I had already made the decision to let them go, to choose my daughter and my own peace of mind over toxic expectations. I started setting new boundaries, and for the first time, I felt like I was in control of my life. No longer was I bound by the pressures of family, of people who never truly saw me for who I was. I was learning how to be unapologetically myself, and that felt more freeing than anything else. The months passed, and Lena's recovery continued to amaze the doctors. She was no longer just surviving, she was thriving. The little girl I had almost lost was back, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. She was finally the person she was meant to be. And then, one day, she asked me a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Mom, do you think we'll ever be close to Grandma again?" Her voice was small, unsure. She had heard the tension between us, the silence that had grown in place of what should have been a family connection. I sat beside her, looking out at the city below. I thought about everything we'd been through, the healing, the rebuilding, and I knew the answer. Maybe not. But you know what? We're enough, just the way we are. We have each other, and that's all we need. She looked up at me, a small smile spreading across her face. Yeah, we are enough. And just like that, I knew. I had given up on so much, but I had also gained something far more important. The freedom to live life on our own terms, to build the family we wanted, without the constraints of others' expectations. A year later, on Lena's 12th birthday, we celebrated in a way that felt right. It was just the two of us, with a small group of friends, and we spent the entire day doing the things we loved most. There were no big family dinners, no obligatory visits. There was only love. I had finally found peace with my decisions, and so had Lena. The last few months had been a journey of healing, yes, but also a journey of self-discovery. I had learned that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that make us stronger. Letting go of people who don't support you, no matter how much they may try to guilt you, is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. I had chosen to fight for Lena, and in doing so, I had fought for myself. And as I looked at Lena, smiling with her friends, I realized something important. We were enough. We had made it through the storm. And now we were standing in the light, stronger and more connected than ever before.